everyone, I hope you are doing great. In this video, we will cover pair value gaps, addressing the concepts of a fair value gap, busy, SIBI, consequent encroachment, and inversion. Additionally, we'll discuss the distinctions between a fair value gap, volume and balance, and a gap. Let's begin by understanding what a fair value gap is. It is a three-candlestick pattern where the first candle's low does not overlap with the third candle's high, or where the first candle's high does not overlap with the third candle's low. Delving deeper into this, if we extend the low and high of certain candles and observe no overlap, it constitutes a fair value gap. In the given example, the candlestick's high does not overlap with its low, making it a fair value gap. Similarly, another instance demonstrates a fair value gap where the high of one candle does not overlap with the low of another. Now that you comprehend what a fair value gap looks like, let's clarify what it doesn't look like. If we were to extend the low of one candle downward and the high of another upward, and yet they still overlap, then it does not constitute a fair value gap. The same applies in another scenario, where extending the high and low of the candles reveals overlapping, indicating the absence of a fair value gap. To reiterate, a fair value gap arises when there is a gap between the low of the first candle and the high of the third candle, or between the high of the first candle and the low of the third candle. Now, let's examine a few examples for better understanding. We will explore several examples of identifying fair value gaps. Let's examine this section where we have the first candle's low extended and the third candle's high extended, creating a gap between them, forming a fair value gap. Another fair value gap emerges when the low of one candle does not overlap with the high of another, leading to a strong move in the opposite direction. Moving on to SIBI and busy. A SIBI represents a sell-side imbalance, indicating that the sell side was offered, but the buy side wasn't, causing a bearish fair value gap. Conversely, a busy refers to a buy-side imbalance, where the buy side was offered, but the sell side wasn't, resulting in a bullish fair value gap. In this price section, we can observe a bearish fair value gap, signaling that the sell side was offered while the buy side was inefficient, forming a SIBI. At another point, price displays a bullish fair value gap or a busy as it offered the buy side but not the sell side.
Recommended broker is Longhorn FX. Trade a wide variety of assets with leverage up to 1 to 500. How to sign up? It's as simple as entering a few sign-up details and creating a password. Be ready to receive a welcome email where you can later verify your account. To secure your account, it's recommended an extra step of verification, even by call or text message.
Within a fair value gap, 3 essential elements to consider are the start of the fair value gap, the consequent encroachment, and the point where price completely fills the fair value gap. When price returns to the fair value gap, it may either reach up into the gap, close out, and continue lower, or reach up into the consequent encroachment, with a preference for a candle to close outside of it. To invalidate a fair value gap, close attention should be paid to price closing over the consequent encroachment or outside of the fair value gap, as this could indicate a potential non-reversal scenario. Let's refer back to our previous example where we have a SIBI marked right here. We'll proceed to identify the consequent encroachment and observe the outcome. As we reach up into the fair value gap, notice that the price fails to close over the consequent encroachment. For instance, consider this SIBI on the chart. Marking out the consequent encroachment reveals that the price completely disregards it and closes right through. This invalidates the fair value gap since price is not prospecting it. Now, let's examine another SIBI and identify the consequent encroachment. If we observe the price reaching into the fair value gap and closing outside, it currently appears to respect it. However, if we take a range's discount and premium, I'd prefer it to reach a slightly lower level for a discounted range. Moving on, we'll focus on fair value gap inversion. This occurs when the fair value gap fails and the price closes through it. Subsequently, this fair value gap can function as either support or resistance. Therefore, if the price returns to this old SIBI, I expect it to use it as a support and move away from it. Similarly, if it returns to this old busy, it should be used as resistance, and the price should move away accordingly. It's important to note that these occurrences don't necessarily have to be consecutive, and the fair value gaps might not overlap. Such events can take place later on after a period of consolidation. Finalizing our discussion in this video, we'll explore the distinction between a fair value gap, volume imbalance, and a previously covered gap. Let's start by revisiting the concept of a fair value gap that we've previously talked about. Now let's delve into the concept of volume imbalance within the realm of trading. A volume imbalance refers to a gap that emerges between the opening and closing prices of consecutive candles. What sets a volume imbalance apart from a gap is the occurrence of trading or overlap between the high and low prices. To illustrate, consider a specific case of a volume imbalance. In this instance, the shift from the closing price to the opening price uncovers a price gap. However, it's important to note that trading activity did indeed take place within these price levels. This presence of trading activity characterizes it as a volume imbalance rather than a gap. Consequently, when the price retraces to this particular area, a distinct market reaction becomes evident. On the contrary, let's examine an instance of a gap between consecutive candles. In this situation, a complete absence of trading activity exists between the two candles, which defines a true gap. I'm confident that you've gained valuable insights from this video presentation. If you found the material helpful, kindly express your appreciation by liking and subscribing.